Okay, welcome everyone. We're off. Thursday, February 17th. I changed the background here. We're in the winter time. I've got some media updates on a lot of coverage that we've gotten this winter about road salt and such. So we'll talk about that in a bit here, but welcome everyone. I'm just going to get right into it here. The meeting is being recorded, so just note that and just stay muted unless you're going to be talking. Just as a review, these meetings are the third Thursday of every month from 2:30 to 3:30. This Zoom link remains the same, so keep that for your records if you like. I do send out reminder emails, one on the week before and then on the morning of. But please feel free to share that Zoom link if you have others that would like to participate. And also feel free to let me know about emails that should be added to the distribution list, and I'll add them to that list. So folks that are attending these meetings include people that are involved in the Delaware River Watershed Initiative directly, as well as groups that are just working within the Delaware Basin. And then there are also folks from around the country that are joining as well. We're supporting this work via the Delaware River Watershed Initiative and supporting work in Pennsylvania via the Consortium for Scientific Assistance to Watersheds. This is the webpage for the DRWI. Feel free to check that out if you like. And this is the webpage for Seesaw. Basic goals for these meetings, it's simply a time to check in and for us to have questions and discussion. We provide updates from the Stroud Center about the network of sensors and everything related to that. And then we have presentations from station owners and managers. And then we also have topic presentations from Stroud experts and others. So project personnel from the Stroud Center that are involved, myself, Rachel Johnson, Krista Reeves, and Shannon Hicks. Two master watershed stewards actively involved, Carol Armstrong and George Seeds. Carol is going to be doing a presentation today. And then the Stroud Center leads in the DRWI context. Dr. John Jackson, Matt Earhart, and Dave Arscott. As a reminder, all these meetings are recorded and the presentations are also available at this location. From this, in this whole project, EnviroDIY in the Delaware River Basin, our primary goal from the Stroud Center's perspective is to support station owners and managers and the volunteers that are supporting these stations, supporting them in using the stations for their own purposes. Secondarily, we are analyzing the broad data set and developing tools to help groups in using the data, applying the data, and communicating the data. So today's agenda, introduction, which I'm doing right now. We'll get into Stroud updates in a little bit here. Two presentations. Carol's presentation, a stream runs through it using basic stream monitoring tools to query local trends and concerns. This is in relation to Pickering Creek. And then we have EnviroDIY technology updates from Shannon. So updates. Rachel, Steve Mohap, and Shannon Hicks all are continuing to do lots of troubleshooting across the basin, primarily with regard to replacing cell boards and mayflies with the new cell boards that Shannon designed and the newer mayflies. And this tally, is growing this winter. It's leveled off, which has been great. We've kind of caught up from all the pandemic backlog of things. And that is in no small part due to those folks. And here's George here as well, who's really helped a lot with that type of stuff. So regarding that, these old boards are being replaced by the new Mayfly, the new cell boards. One kind of thing to keep in mind is that if your station goes in this range of 3.5 volts, that's a signal that it's running out. If it and it goes on offline because of that, that's a signal that the battery is dead. But if it goes offline and this does not go to 3.5 or is not near 3.5, it's likely that the cell board has gone bad. So just keep that in mind in terms of you know, if your station goes offline and thinking about why that may be. Okay, so we are also looking for blog posts for the EnviroDIY blog. Technology, organizational, and sort of situational timely information are all subject matter that can be included in the blog. So if you have anything you'd like to talk about in the form of a blog, please feel free to be in touch. That can be technical stuff, that can be program-oriented things, or anything related. So feel free to be in touch if you think you'd like to write a blog. As we know, Monitor My Watershed is being transitioned to Amazon Web Services, AWS. This is being done by Limnotech in collaboration with the Stroud Center. Some folks initially had to reboot stations in order to let some of those transitions carry over. And just as a reminder, rebooting a station is always a good thing to do if you're having issues, just to see if that can fix things. Sometimes that does fix things, just like restarting your computer can help. And then if you want more details on this transition to Amazon Web Services, you can reference this same meeting recording from the January monthly meeting. And just as a reminder, we do recommend that everyone who is involved with these stations register for an EnviroDIY account and then sign up for daily or weekly email updates from the forum. And on the forum is where a lot of discussion takes place about some of the changes going on. Okay, so there is a new look to Monitor My Watershed because of this. This is ongoing, so if you get in there and there's something not, you know, kind of a little off, don't worry about it. There is going to be ongoing updates throughout this year, making Monitor increasingly functional and user-friendly. So just the kind of EnviroDIY webpage here where you can access the forums, and to keep track of Monitor My Watershed type stuff, you can go to this forum here. You can also access GitHub and check in on things there as far as the super kind of detailed technical issues that are being addressed. Okay, on to other updates. We have our next EnviroDIY build workshop scheduled for April 27 to 28. It is open to the public at this point. All you have to do is go to envirodiy.org and go to, it's under the Participate tab in Events. And you just go in there and it has all the different directions for registering, for buying monitoring kits, and for buying your sensors. I mentioned earlier that there's been quite a bit of media coverage this winter, primarily with regard to salt and streams. A lot of this stuff has been listed on the Stroud Center webpage. So just go here into media coverage. Right here is one interview that John Jackson did with Fox 29 News. That one is quite good. A lot of good information there. Rachel is going to be posting in the links for each of these stories that I'm going to mention here. So feel free to copy those out and keep for your reference. There were also a couple of Philadelphia Inquirer articles that came out. This one on salt by Frank Kumer. And then this one which is more broadly directed at impairment of Pennsylvania streams. And then there were 2 recent radio interviews on WHYY and WITF. Same types of information, road salt and such. It seems like every interview there's different, they kind of take it in different directions, so it can be useful to listen to all of these interviews. They're all relatively short, but they're packed with really good information. So it's neat that this exposure is out there, but it's also just really good educational material for all of us. So feel free to access those, and Rachel is continuing to post those in to the chat. And then there's been lots and lots of coverage via Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and such, and these stories get amplified via different groups, Musconetcong, Kong, Nature Conservancy, TTF, etc. So that's been great. There's been lots and lots of amplification via those methods. And then there was also an article published in a special issue of the Stroud Center's Upstream newsletter. Again, that is accessible on the Stroud Center website. And related to all this, feel free to subscribe to the Stroud Center's e-news. Let's go to this, this link here, and you can sign up and get email messages that will update you on different news pieces coming out. And Rachel, I think maybe I didn't give you those last 2 links to the Stroud Center sites. So if you want to access the presentation and grab those out, feel free. Okay, moving on to other updates. 2 surveys we're going to be asking folks to participate in. This one on monitoring and C science terminology, C meaning for citizen or community. And this is really just a survey that we are wanting to get your thoughts on this type of terminology and this network, this group of stations and people and groups that are working across the Delaware Basin, all in collaboration. And this is really to just give us feedback, and it will help us in communicating about the program, about the work that's being done. So expect to receive an email with this survey, with a link to this survey within the next week. It'll probably be early next week that we send it out. And your feedback on that will be greatly appreciated. And then the other survey is a science survey. It's kind of just a little pilot study that we thought we'd do on salt in tap water. So it relates to all of this salt work going on across the basin in streams, but it takes it to the tap. And it's just basically measuring your tap water for chloride and conductivity levels. And I'll send that out probably within the next 2 weeks, and that will be a little more open-ended. The terminology survey, I think, will give like a week to get feedback on that, but this one will be a little more open-ended. So again, your help on that will be greatly appreciated. All the data collected in that will be immediately accessible to you. So it's not just submitting data and not having access to it. You'll have access to the data that you collect, as well as the data that everyone else is collecting immediately. And then just as a reminder, there's lots of resources about all of this EnviroDIY focused work that we're doing on this site, wikiwatershed.org/DRWI. And if you can't access that for some reason, you can always just go to wikiwatershed.org and click on DRWI here. Okay, so any questions before we move on? All good? Okay. Well, we've got Carol now that is going to present. Cheryl's going to talk for 20 to 25 minutes, and then Shannon's going to give some updates, and then we'll have probably a few minutes, hopefully a few minutes to discuss things. So I will stop share. And Carol, you can take it over. And you're muted, Carol.
Thanks, David. Wanted to mention that the webinar that the Stroud just sponsored on the Pfas scientist, couldn't pick up her name right away, a chemist who's been focusing on this. Anyway, her company, or the company that she's part of, they are also testing residential water supplies for Pfas at a price that I consider to be very good and probably grant supported. So I just want to mention that they make it really a doable thing if you want to find out about Pfas in your own water. Okay, let me go to my presentation. So this is the Pickering Creek, a very beautiful, high quality stream designated by the Department of Environmental Protection. And I consider this basically a case study of how you can use some basic stream monitoring tools if you have concerns about the stream that you're working with and trying to protect. There were some red flags that concerned me, having to do with the loss of the riparian buffer and some suburban urban runoff coming into the stream. And so that's what spurred me on to collect some data. So here's just a big picture for anyone who's not from the area to show you where this is. Here's the site of Pickering Creek at the YMCA. This is one of two stations on the Pickering main stem that I helped to monitor. Here's Philadelphia, here's Wilmington, here's New York. We consider this the megalopolis going down to DC, so a highly developed area. Here's the Poconos going up, which are basically, I guess, foothills of Appalachia. And this is the northern Piedmont area and the coastal plain. And over here, coming in a little closer, here's the Pickering. You can see that it goes, it's impounded by a dam and becomes drinking water reservoir that feeds many of the local communities. And then it goes into the Schuylkill River, which is a tributary of the Delaware River, which is an American wild and scenic river. Now we're coming in closer. Here is the Phoenixville YMCA here. This is their main building, their parking lots, their swimming pool, and this is where one of the stations are. Here's from Model My Watershed, the same view just to show you the tributaries. So this tributary here is what I investigated. I took a YSI and a handheld HANA monitor, conductivity monitor temperature to look at the values along here to see what influenced the stream. And then I started measuring it once it came into the YMCA. Here's the impounded reservoir and Schuylkill River over here. Again, we're getting closer because now I want to show you my site numbers. So let me go back for a second. I'm sorry. Oh, it won't let me go back. That's all right. I just wanted to show you the developed areas. It's just all housing and some industry in this area upstream from this tributary. It comes, here's where it surfaces at the YMCA, and this is site number 1. I then measured it after it went through a natural area just to see if there's if it affected any of the measurements. And then here's another tributary, that unnamed tributary that goes out here to a wetland that's surrounded just outside the screen by a lot of townhouses. You know what? I don't know why. Let's see. Okay. I measured that tributaries affect. Okay. I measured the tributaries chemical values before it joined with the one coming from the suburban area. I measured where they are in confluence, but just before they enter the Pickering. And then I measured here, which is where the EnviroDIY station with the mayfly is. This is upstream from these sites here. This one I'll get to later You see these large parking lots, big one here, here, even back here. And in this turquoise spot here is where they put a big salt pile every year. Been working on this with them for a few years now, and they don't take care of it properly, and it runs off and it enters the stream here. So I have a few measurements from this area. So here are the numbers I would like you to remember. Here's site 1, where it enters the YMCA. Site 2 is just before another tributary joins it. Site 3 is the other tributary. Sorry, I don't have control over this. Site 3 is the other tributary. Site 4 is where they come together, but before they enter the Pickering. And then site 5 is where the EnviroDIY station is. And this is an unnumbered site where the salt pile enters the stream. So first, here's data from that the Stroud Water Research Center generated. These are grab samples that I took in 2017 and 18 that were correlated with the station's continuous data conductivity. And it just shows you that there's a very close association between conductivity and chlorides. 98% of the chlorides are explained by conductivity, or I should say 98% of the conductivity explained by chlorides. They're associated, and the slope is around 4.4. I want you to, yeah, let me stick with that.
Hey, Carol, can we pause for a second? I'm getting feedback that there's been a loss of audio for you. Are others able to hear Carol?
I can hear her clearly.
I can hear clear.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Carol.
Continue. All right. Sorry. So this is the handheld instrument that I started using. So the first analysis was from 2017 and 18, and then I started collecting data from 2018 to 21. So this is not the CTD sensor. This is the HANA handheld sensor, along with along with chloride strips. So these are using different instruments than here, but I wanted to show you that it's basically a replication of the association of chlorides and conductivity. They both have a very similar slope. They're both highly associated. So I just think it's good to notice that the handheld instruments are doing a pretty good job. And then I want you to notice that a chloride level of around 50, which is here, is associated with conductivity a little over 300, between 300 and 350. The same here with the Stroud analysis. 50 is associated with something a little over 300 USCMs of conductivity, microsiemens. So here's the measurements I took in 2018 and 21. So first of all, I used data from the station, from the CTD sensor and turbidity, the HANA conductivity meter, hot chloride strips, which gives you the percent, that is sodium chloride specifically, and then the amount of chlorides in milligrams per liter. And then later in the study, I brought in the HOC 5-in-1 water quality strips that give you pH, total hardness, total alkalinity, and chlorine. I also did, I'm not showing it here, but I also just looked at the values using the HANA conductivity meter and the YSI meter. And at all measurements, the HANA gave lower conductivity levels than the YSI did. And when I looked at my QC measures over years from that site, I also saw that the HANA was giving lower USCM values than the CTD sensor. So I was already into the study and didn't want to change instruments, but if I were to start a new study, I would switch to the YSI. So I want to remind you of the station numbers again. I'm going to start showing their data. So 1 is where it enters the site. 2 is before another tributary joins it. 3 is the second tributary that goes out to a protected wetland, but it goes below this parking lot. This is downhill from the parking lot. So all of the car, motor, tire materials and salts over the years come down this lawn into this tributary here. And 4 is where they both enter the Pickering, and 5 is the Pickering values upstream as a reference measure. So here's one of the problems, the salt pile. This is often how I found it. This is not an unusual example. Even when they take the salt out, they tend not to cover it. Even when there's a prediction of rain that day or the next day, they still don't cover it. And then here's, even when they have it covered, this is what they consider adequate cover or good covering. You can see back here it's exposed, here it's exposed. It still melts out, goes down. It looks like a flat parking lot. It's not. It goes downhill. It goes into this grass field. You can see it burns it out. It goes into the service road, comes down this way, and then enters the Pickering here. So I have a few measurements from here where it enters the Pickering. Let me see if it skipped one here. Okay, no. All right, so first, just an overview. So this is data from all 5 sites, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 35 measurements of temperature at all 5 sites. So you can see that all of the sites bring in warmer water to the Pickering than the reference site at the CTG sensor upstream. The difference is not great, but it is all warmer than the Pickering. In terms of conductivity, the same kind of story. This 322 is basically a base level for Pickering, kind of the mean of conductivity at the upstream main stem. So all of the sites are bringing in pretty significant levels of conductivity into the Pickering. And I took just a few measures at this point where the salt pile runs into the Pickering. Sorry, everyone. And all of my measurements were in April and July. And so it's interesting that even in the summertime, the conductivity was significantly higher where the salt's coming in. So it's there permanently at this point, and every year it gets contributed to. It's just accumulating and then running off. Here's some seasonal variations in temperature. So at site 1, this is where it comes into the campus, and then this is the reference site, site 5, where the main stem measurement is. And with this is showing that in winter, spring, and fall, the temperatures are a little higher in the water that's coming into the site from the tributaries, except in summer, the main stem is even a little warmer, maybe not significantly, but it's a little warmer. This is 35 measurements again. Now, I've given both the centigrade on the y-axis and Fahrenheit for those who might want to think about it one way or the other. Trout prefer 68 degrees Fahrenheit, but they have a tolerance to 77 degrees, but only for very short periods. And if you look at all of the data from the continuous monitoring sensors, it actually reaches, unfortunately, that 77 Fahrenheit is 25 centigrade. It actually reaches 25 often in the summertime. And the temperatures actually each year, as I said, we've got 4 years now that we've been monitoring the site. Each year, the temperatures in summer and in winter have been increasing. It's not varying hotter one year than another. It's just slowly increasing over time. So this high quality stream is at risk for the conductivity that's being washed into it from the community and even from heat. So while this stream in many places is a good is considered by DEP to support aquatic life, it's getting to be on the edge. It's getting to be a concern. I'm going to skip over that graph. So now I'm going to focus on site 1, where it's entering the Pickering. Just to remind you, it has the same slope, 4.4. It's a strong association. And here's some seasonal information on conductivity and chloride. So for conductivity, it is highest in winter. This is, as you can see, above the main stem mean of around 325 or something. It does get a little better in the spring and summer. It's still high, all right? Nothing goes near 300. And then in the fall, whatever's going on, it begins to go up again, whereas the chlorides just show a continuous decrease. So after a year of rains and washing the salt from the soil into the water, it slowly decreases, but it's still above 50, okay? Which is just kind of my reference value for the moment. It's still above 50, so I want you to remember that. At all seasons, it's above 50 at this site. I'm sorry, the contributions coming into the site, into the Pickering from the suburban areas. Here's there's not that much to see here really. These are just the associations of conductivity and chloride strips data at all 5 locations. They all show a slope of between 4 and 4 point, well, entering the suburban tributary, unnamed tributary that enters them, this is the first site 1 and 2, have a similar value between 4 and 4.4 slope and a strong association. When we get to the lateral unnamed tributary below the other YMCA parking lot coming from the wetland, there's a less, the slope decreases and there's less of an association. So it looks like there might be something different coming into the stream from that site, because that site still shows high conductivity levels. They're still elevated. So there's something else that's contributing to that. At site 4, this is where the 2 come together. So basically you get a value that's a slope that's kind of the combination of the 2, still a strong association between chlorides and conductivity. And then this is what you saw before at the Pickering main stem upstream from all of this. So in order to try to investigate what other influences there could be coming from the other unnamed tributary, David suggested I look at the hardness and alkalinity data, because if alkalinity and hardness correlate, then that can indicate that there's limestone that's increasing the conductivity at the site. I only had 8 to 10 values to look at, but I just want to show you that this is a sensitivity test, and the sensitivity test is telling us that there isn't an association in this case, in this site, between alkalinity and hardness. So it's not because it's limestone that's elevating the conductivity there. It's probably human impact. It's most certainly human impact. I don't know what's coming out of those townhouses. And as I say, the YMCA itself produces a lot with their parking lots. So I'm almost done, but I just want to talk a little bit more about about criteria for chlorides and how they affect aquatic life. So the EPA criterion for chronic, based on a 4-day average exposure, is levels of chlorides that are 230 milligrams per liter. And the acute criterion is 860 milligrams per liter based on a 1-hour average. Each criterion is not to be exceeded more than once in 3 years. Okay, so this is not supposed to happen quickly. This is really a toxicity criterion. So basically, this is out of all of these other, if you look at how other states and countries, what kind of thresholds they are using, you'll see that the EPA, they're using a threshold for aquatic life that's similar to what they use for human drinking water, which is 250 milligrams per liter of chlorides is when you can start tasting salt in the water. And, this is not a whole lot lower than that. But other states, Michigan for chronic, in terms of chronic exposures, and also it's lower for the acute exposures, are 150, Canada 120, Delaware River Basin for these, this is zone 2 and 3 here, for these highly urbanized areas is lower, and Maryland uses a level of 50. I told you to remember 50 chlorides. So the EPA is definitely using looser standards. These, when chlorides exceed these levels, it's evident that it's creating conditions that are stressful and even lethal. And as I say, I think the EPA standards probably are associated with the lethality of the lethalness of it. So I look to see how often now I can use conductivity as a proxy for chlorides. Now that I know that I have a strong association between the two, I was able to replicate it. I know, replicate the slope and the association. And so I can start using that to look at how close I am to the EPA threshold in the stream. So I used the value of a chronic criterion of 230 milligrams, that's the EPA standard, is just something 900 and above microsiemens per centimeter on a 4-day average of conductivity. So I used the continuous conductivity data and just did a rough, really, casual looking and measuring of how much time did the stream spend above that EPA standard. So in 2018, during this storm, it was above that, and often way above that, okay? 900 I'm looking at, well, it went up to 1600. So when I looked at how much it was above 900, it was about 12 hours. In 2019, it was more than 24 hours. In 2020, more than 10 hours. Two close events in 2020, 21 were 8 and 9 hours. And then this year in February, almost an hour. Now, remember, this is only supposed to occur once in a 3-day. Now, none of these are 4-day exposures, 4-day averages. I don't think any of these would average out. So these are hours versus days, but it's occurring every year. So again, this is just another red flag, or I should say the data behind the red flags of our concerns of what communities are introducing into a high quality stream, even communities that are not, there's no big shopping area there. This is just a regular suburban community. It's still putting this stream close to the edge. And what it does when it's not totally toxic, it does decrease the abundance and diversity of species overall. So I think I'm going to skip over this. This is just showing how bad it gets in some areas that someone did. This is some data that David introduced me to by, let's see, this is blocking what I can see here. Let me see if I can move this. Griffith, anyway, I think it's Griffith 2014. He collected data from the EPA of all different regions in the country. And these are chlorides over here. They're given in microequivalents per liter. And so you take basically the constant for the particular chemical you're interested in. And I applied it and it resulted in these chloride levels for the northern Piedmont area. So these are the natural levels of chlorides that we should be, that is our base level, the natural level of chlorides in the northern Piedmont. And you'll see that in terms of the mean and median, they're down between 15 and 23. It rarely reaches that, only, I guess, right after a complete dilution. But in terms of base flow, it doesn't get to, it's not at 23 and 15. It's way above these chloride levels at the Pickering. So I don't think I'm going to do this. I'm probably over my time. I just wanted to tell you, though, that New Hampshire has some interesting findings. They were the first in the country to use salts on winter roads, and then they were the first to develop a TMDL, and just some information that they're using to try to address the TMDL. Am I over, David? Shall I stop? I'll stop there.
Yeah, that's probably a good stopping point, Carol.
Thank you.
Great presentation. One follow-up regarding those levels that you showed from Griffith. Those are actual current reference sites. So those are sites that are like, heavily forested or at least partially forested, and they serve as current reference sites. But even those could potentially be contaminated, because oftentimes those do have roads going through them, and there could be some salt contamination there. The historic reference on chloride is even lower than that and seems to be in the 5 to 15 range in our region. So it's been a growing problem since, I think the 40s really, and it's just getting worse and worse, especially in the last 10 to 20 years, in which there's been a lot more salt application. Thank you, Carol. I think we should probably just move on to Shannon. And then after Shannon's done, we can take questions from everyone. If that is okay with you, Carol, and with you, Shannon. Okay. Jeff, your hand raise is noted. So Jeff will have a question after Shannon is done. So Shannon, if you want to go ahead.
That was just applauding Carol's presentation. That wasn't a hand raise.
Oh, gotcha. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, well, I'll go real quick here. I just want to give people an update. We talked last month where I forget exactly where things stood a month ago. In terms of electronics, things are constantly changing, that things are out of stock, in stock, part numbers are changing. But we have been able to locate all of the components that we use when we're building the monitoring kits stations that we provide on our EnviroDIY shop, and which is the Pelican case and the mounting brackets and all the parts and pieces. So We've got all of that in-house now. And if you've noticed on the website, we have upgraded or updated the picture. So it has the picture of what the current kit is on the website. And we were out of mayfly boards after last fall, I think October, November. There was a lot of interest and everybody was buying them. And if you see here in this nice little box, I have several big boxes of these, lots and lots of more mayfly boards. They're not ready to mail out to folks right yet because I've got to do a little bit of configuring on each one of them and testing and programming. So we need like another week or so before we're able to release them. And there's going to be more information on our website. I've been working with our webmaster here to create a more of an informational page than, because right now when somebody wants to buy a mayfly or a cell board or whatever's going on, sometimes tracking down that information is hard to find on our website because it gets lost in a forum post that then gets moved further down in the list because new questions have come in. So we're going to have like one page that's going to have a nice table with a list of all the things that we sell and whether it's available in the shop or on Amazon. And if it's not available, it'll have a date and some notes about when it might be expected and all that. So it'll be a one-page thing where everybody can go to see the status of everything. And we'll try to update that on like a weekly basis kind of thing. Or whenever there's a major update. So hopefully that will be rolling out in the next day or two, that website. And then that website will also contain information with the dates of when people can expect to be able to start buying more mayflies and all the other accessories and things that we have. So that's the exciting news there, is that everything is here. We're just trying to get all the website and all the things that work behind the scenes to work together to get everything to the people who want it. It's been a little hard because I thought I would have more time in the lab in February to do that sort of thing. But because the weather's been so nice lately, we've actually been doing a lot of field work, replacing and repairing and deploying some new stuff and doing some testing. And we were actually just out today. It's beautiful weather. So it's really nice to do field work in February. And I had originally planned to be, sitting here watching snow outside the window constantly, but we've been able to get out and do a lot more field work. So that's taken us away from the product side of thing. But we've also been able to deploy a lot of extra stations and do some work to make sure that people weren't going to miss chloride pulses from all the ice and rain runoff from some of the storms from the last few cold snowstorms and ice situations we've had lately. So yeah, our schedule is kind of what we can do in terms of mayfly and board development depends a lot on the weather and all of that kind of thing. So it looks like the next week or so is going to be kind of rainy. I should be indoors finishing up the stuff with the website and the circuit boards, and all of that will be available. And we'll post a message, like actually probably a blog post on EnviroDIY that will explain the new web page and some of the timing of stuff. So as Dave said earlier, if you sign up for our EnviroDIY either daily or weekly summary emails, then you would see that there. Or if you just check out the web page occasionally, it should be fairly prominent in the blog section with little rotating slideshow there. It'll be the most recent blog post that will give you some information about it. So that's kind of the timing on that. And yeah, we'll definitely by next month, when we have the next March meeting, everything should be already out and everybody should be happily have received whatever they've ordered at that point. But yeah, it's coming very soon. And Jim's asking about pre-order real quick. Yeah, we don't really have a pre-order system in just yet because we're not a major company with major logistics and shipping department. It's just me and this box of stuff and then materials back here to pack and mail and labeling and everything. So we try not to take too many orders ahead of time before we know that they're ready to go and ready to go out the door, because we don't want to accidentally pre-sell too many things. So basically, when we know we have a certain quantity ready, we put that quantity in the shop. And sometimes that goes quick. There's not anything we can do about it, but we really don't want to get in a situation of promising a certain number of boards and then find out that we can't fulfill that, or there's some sort of logistics thing there. So we basically only put them available when they are ready. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Great. Let's see. Carol, Jim had a question. and I tried to answer some of it, but he was asking, are there any local ordinances dealing with open salt piles that Carol was showing at the YMCA? You're muted, Carol.
Thanks, David. The short answer is that the DEP does not have, unlike some other states, does not have a regulation on the amount of, on salt piles themselves. Their regulation only is a qualitative one that applies to, you are not permitted to allow concentrated streams of salt to enter streams. The example I gave you did violate that. It was obvious, you could see it. And so the DEP was concerned, and they did come out 2 or 3 times to talk to them about the salt pile. But the DEP is not a very, I don't want to say aggressive, because
I don't think the DEP has enforcement powers, or do they?
no, the DEP is the enforcement power for our state for environmental issues.
DCNR doesn't, you're right. Okay, so
Yeah,
DEP is the,
is the one to do it, and they're not very strong in that way, and they never have been. That's the history of the DEP in our state. So, but they do make some effort. So that's the thing, and that's why if you have a situation you're concerned about, then you need to be very persistent. Right now, I'm in a phase, David's been kind of advising me, I'm in a phase of trying to educate them. I'm requesting, sending them information, asking them to do a better job at covering it, giving them some alternates. But I have no force behind me, certainly. I just have their ear at this point. So, it's a process. I don't want to keep making the DEP come out and fine them. That's up to the DEP, but, maybe in the end, that's what, it's been 3 years of documentation now, so.
I would make a recommendation. I've had some luck going directly to the township folks. And
Well, each time I went to the township, you have to go to the township first. That's the proper route. You have to go to the township first, report it to them, and they will report it to the DEP, but you can also individually report it to the DEP. You can report it by phone, and you can also fill out a sheet where you can give more information. Remember, you always have to have location for them. They have to know where to go.
Okay, thank you, Pete, for that feedback. Thank you, Carol. Let me see, Dusanka had a question for Carol. She's asking about the sites, and I think in your map, Carol, it didn't quite show accurately the way those streams flowed. The sites 1 and 2 were on separate tribs, and then 3 was after those tribs came together. Is that correct?
No, 1 and 2 were the first. It's not popping up right now. 1 and 3 were the first. Here, it's not, for some reason, it's not pumping up for me right now. I can't get the site back up. 1 and 2 were both the same tributary that comes in from the suburban areas. 3 was the second tributary that comes from a wetland but goes underneath another big parking lot. And 4 is where both of them converge, but before they enter the Pickering. And 5 was upstream from all of those at the DIY station.
Okay. Okay, let's see, any other, I'm just scrolling through the chat here to make sure that we didn't miss anything. Anyone have any other questions that you wanted to pose or that were posed in the chat and I have missed here?
I have a quick question.
Sure, Alexander, go for it.
Has anybody approached the Municipal Planning Commission and requested that they make a new ordinance for that, and then they would recommend that to the governing body, perhaps?
Well, usually I'm just giving my 2 cents here. Other people may have more insight than I do about this. Townships tend to just want to follow the regulations that they're required to by the state. They tend not to, I mean, it would take, I would say it would take a lot of congruence within the township officials around around environmental values. You'd have to have everyone agreeing on this ratio between this ratio between environmental protection and individual rights. That's where the struggle is. And so everyone would have to say, no, we want to raise environmental protection up at least on an equal level with property rights. So I'm not aware of towns. I'm sure there are towns, there must be towns maybe that have taken stricter standards. Towns are allowed to, they are permitted to do something that's stricter in environmental protection than the state regulations.
Okay. Let's see. Dusanka, did you want to chime in? She is, or they're saying,
Hi, I was just
Right.
asking about enforcement because in Park in New York, Orange County, we have an issue where we don't feel like the town officials, when we report issues, they don't seem to go anywhere. And quite frankly, the DEC is not much better. So I just wondered you just said that we have to be persistent, which I think the DRA with the New York EnviroCon is doing right now. But I just wanted to listen in on what other direction we should be taking. Thank you.
Well, remember, documentation's good, right? Evidence, those pictures, no one can argue about the pictures.
you know, I wonder, Alexander Jackson is with Broadhead, and Deer Park and Broadhead are both pretty active, involved members in DRWI. So I'm wondering if your two groups might be able to kind of have some communication on along those lines, Dusanka. If you know, just thinking in terms of you're in two different states, but it sounds like Alexander has some kind of background in this, so there may be opportunity to kind of.
I'll pass that on. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Anything else here? Any other questions from anyone? Any other issues to discuss?
Hi,
Hi, Grace.
can you hear me, David? I'm sorry, I had a very busy day, but just picking up on the frustrations of Dusanka, who's a compatriot. There is the regulations, an approach for changing regulations and building up environmental regulations and codes. There's an attorney she's worked with in the Hudson River Watershed, and her name is Emily Svensson. I don't know if anybody knows of her. She's over in Poughkeepsie. She's with David Gordon, and she is very skilled in presenting methods to towns, and she's very unconfrontational, but suggesting how environmental issues can be strengthened, such as creating buffer zones. And so I highly recommend, if people are having not only problems with speaking to municipalities, but speaking, getting her input as to an approach.
Grace, would you mind typing her name and maybe email into the chat?
Yes, I will do that.
Good, thank you.
I just want to add that that's one strategy I can take, which is to now try to interest the YMCA in working with me to get a grant to improve the riparian buffer. Of course, there are other benefits to that, but I just wanted to say that's where I'm hoping to go from here.
Good. Thank you, Carol. Okay, well, we are at 3:26, so we're approaching our meeting's end. Anyone else have anything to mention? I think there was one comment earlier or one question about any results from the Monitor My Watershed survey. I think Scott is on the call here. I don't know if Scott, if you have any feedback on that monitor survey.
Yeah, we have 32 different responses, which is good, but I would strongly encourage anybody who uses Monitor My Watershed to chime in on that survey. It's going to very much inform how we prioritize feature development going forward. So Dave, you could maybe, or I could share that link again in the chat.
Yeah, do you mind just posting that into the chat, Scott?
Yep, will do. Hang on just a second.
Sure. And I don't know, Rob, was that you asking?
Yes, and that could be a topic of one of these meetings to see what the results of the survey were and the range of different new features, et cetera. And that would be good if we could hear that.
Okay, great. That's a good suggestion, Rob. Appreciate that. So we'll think about maybe we can do that next month if Scott has gotten enough responses in that by that time.
Excellent.
Okay, and I guess Scott's going to post that in there, but that is on the EnviroDIY.org page, just so that everyone knows if that doesn't get pasted in there before we end up closing out the meeting here.
It's there now, Dave.
Oh, it is there. Okay, thanks, Scott. Good, so everyone just take that and complete that if you haven't done already and you have a few minutes, that would be very much appreciated. And as a reminder, just keep an eye out for those emails from me in the next couple weeks about those, the terminology survey and the tap water survey, and feel free to participate in both, especially the terminology survey, everyone is going to be able to participate in. The tap water survey, you're going to need a bit of equipment, so feel free to be in touch about that, but it's relatively low cost equipment, so should be relatively accessible. So
David, could I mention the plastics?
sure. Oh, yes, go ahead, Carol, and share your screen if you want.
Okay, I wonder if I still have it up. So the Friends of the Hines Refuge, which supports the John Hines Natural Wildlife Refuge, nation's first urban refuge, that has plastic pollution as one of its top problems. So among everything else, that's one of the top ones. We're having a series of 4 webinars on the problem of plastic pollution with some very good speakers from University of Delaware, Jonathan Cohen, recent findings from the DRBC's study of microplastics in the Delaware, middle and lower Delaware River, presented by Jacob Bransky. We have people who have been very intensely working with community, businesses and governments on reduction of single-use plastics, so the kind of the regulatory aspect. We have a scientist from the Netherlands who's completely focused on trying to understand how macroplastics get into the water, as well as the automated and observational methods for measuring macroplastics in the water, and a psychologist from University of Scranton who's focused on how people respond to regulations about, and we'll focus it on preventing plastic pollution. So it is 3 Wednesdays in March during the noon hour. It starts March 9th, and then 3 other dates after that. You can register, you have to register. You can go online to the Friends of the Hines Refuge Facebook or the Friends of the Hines Refuge website to register. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Carol. Plastics obviously a prominent issue these days, as prominent, if not more prominent than even salt issues and PFAS issues. Grace posted in her stuff for the New York attorney. We are past 3:30 now, so any other closing thoughts from anyone before we sign off? All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending. Be safe out there, take care, and feel free to be in touch about your stations, about your monitoring, about your communications. And we'll see you next month, if not sooner. So take care,
Thank you all.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.